What is up, everybody? It's Dr. Vibe here, host and producer of the award-winning Dr. Vibe Show, home of Epic Conversations. I'm the host of Epic Conversations, 2018 award winner in the innovation category given out by the Canadian Ethnic Media Association. And I am the monthly host and co-producer of live stream broadcasts for fathers that are co-sponsored by Dove Men Care and Dad Central's Canada's national fatherhood organization. As always, I like to say you're blessed, highly favored, a magnet for miracles, and a solution for someone's problem. And you know, I always love having new friends on the Dr. Vibe Show, and I'm fired up. I have another new friend, Candies Kotchapaw. She has done so many positive things and continues to do a lot of positive things. Main thing she's going to share about tonight is her project called Developing Young Leaders of Tomorrow Today, a great organization that, again, I've recently found out about. And we're going to condense it because we've got a limited amount of time. Welcome, Candice, to the Dr. Vibe Show for the first time and not the last time. How are you doing?
I'm doing very well, Dr. Vibe. Thank you so much for having me on your show. It's indeed a privilege and an honor to be sharing with you tonight.
Oh, it's right back at you, privilege and honor. And I love the word you said, share. So I love that. Now, we could spend a whole hour on your background, but if you can give a condensed little background about yourself, I'd appreciate that.
Sure. So my name is Candice Kotchapaw, and I am first and foremost a wife and a mother, and I am a structural social worker. That's my academic background, and I've been around, kind of doing my thing for about working in social services. I started for about 12 years, and really gaining an understanding of some of the challenges that exist that our community faces. And since graduating from York University in the Master of Social Work program, I've really spent the majority of my time determining how I can best address some of the challenges that I faced in school, but also that I know is deep-seated challenges that exist in the Black community and in Black communities across Canada, and clearly now, surfacing around the world. So that's in a nutshell as best
Yes.
as I can provide.
No problem. I'd like to know what took you into the path of social work.
Well, I think when I was younger, I was born in Jamaica, and I think when I was about 8 years old, I took on the role of big sister to my neighbor's children, and really the role of protecting and advocating, because we grew up in impoverished circumstances, but still, even in that situation, I felt like I was still privileged to help to support my neighbors, providing them with dinner when they didn't have it, and when we were going to school, I would share my books with them, I would share my lunch and those things, and I just always felt compelled to be a voice for those who may not know how to speak up. And that kind of drive grew in me as I left Jamaica and I came here to Canada when I was 14. And ever since then, I think I've just always had that inquisitive nature of saying, well, why are things the way that they are, and how come there isn't a mechanism to change the way that things are for people who aren't benefiting from the way things are. So that's kind of the push. The other piece to that is my family, particularly my older sister Simone. Always said I should either be a lawyer or some kind of advocate. So I figured going into law school, I didn't particularly like school that much. So at the time, I didn't particularly like school that much. So I thought, okay, social work would be easier, shorter period of time.
Yes, and
Um,
less costly.
and less costly, absolutely. But it turns out, even not going to law school, I still am doing that advocacy work, and still looking at those structural mechanisms that exist, and looking for ways to continuously challenge those. So I still arrive at the goal anyways.
Nice. How important has your family been in your journey?
Oh my goodness. Absolutely vital. Absolutely vital. I think um, in social work itself as a profession, burnout is real. Burnout is something that happens easily the longer you stay in a particular role. And um, when you're, for me, going into structural social work and looking at issues, not necessarily looking at a one-to-one case scenario where I'm working with a direct individual, but now in entering into a space where I'm looking at how policies exist and impact individuals, but also impact communities. A lot of the time, I'm figuring things out on my own, and so a lot of the time, my family and my very close friends hear me call and will call and check in on me and say, "Hey, are you doing okay?" And I can be real with them and say, you know what, it's been a tough day or it's been a tough few months or something like that. And they encourage me, they tell me, hey, the work that you're doing is important, continue to do it. And if you don't do it, there are others who can, but nobody can do it the way you do it, right? It's your call, it's your purpose, so you have to do what you have to do. So I appreciate my family, my husband, of course, and my I have two girls, and my older daughter, she's 7, and she encourages me in ways that I don't think anybody else can. She says, "Mom, you're gonna save the world." Sometimes she says that,
Oh,
uh,
nice.
and she says, "I want to be like you when I grow up, Mom." And
Nice.
that is encouragement that I could not, replicate in any way. And of course, my mom and sisters and close friends are there as well.
What qualities of your mother do you have in you?
What? Okay. Well, let me tell you, my mom's name is Valerie James, and she's a strong Jamaican Black woman. Let me tell you that. I think her tenacity, her never give up attitude, I think her stubbornness, to continue to do things even when people says that, say that you can't do it. I think most definitely that's something that I have learned and taken from her, and I take pride in it because when you're doing something that is unconventional, when you're doing something that is impactful, and when you're doing something that is meaningful, it's easy for you to get frustrated when things don't always go the way you want. But at the same time, you have to have that tenacity to know that you continue to do the work even when it is challenging. So I'm grateful to my mom for giving me that fighting spirit.
Wonderful. You have done a myriad of things and had a myriad of accomplishments. And I'm going to spend a short time on some of them. Your major research project, The Politics of Social Work, Do Racialized Social Workers Belong in the Practice Space of Public Policy Development? What was that all about?
Right. So when I when I was in university, I was doing my graduate studies, my MSW, Master of Social Work. I got into the program, and honestly, it was very, very white. Um, it was homogenous in race. It didn't look and feel like I belonged there. And when I was thinking about, okay, there's a component to the your degree that requires you to do research. And for me, not even understanding at that point, because I feel like there was a lot of gaps in my undergrad that didn't prepare me very well to do a master. And so when I started to, have those classes that I needed to frame my research thought and my hypotheses and what I wanted to really focus on, I really had no idea. And then I thought about, some of the things that kind of led me to that place, that led me to um, doing the master. And one of the things that I thought about was the challenges that exist in employment, also the overrepresentation of Black children in the child welfare system, particularly in Toronto, and then the overrepresentation of Black youth and Black community members in the criminal justice system. And I thought, we need to focus on those things. Those things are not being addressed in any significant way by people who look like the people who are experiencing these challenges. So I really felt like at that point, this is something that needs to be looked at. Also, when I started to frame my research question and I was looking for data, there was no primary data out there. It was very, very sparsely connected information about, racialized social workers who are doing policy work in Canada specifically. In the United States, there's a myriad of different sources that you can find going back to, I believe, as far as the 1970s. I could find Black social workers who were doing that work. And again, even at the point, a lot of my work was surrounding a social work theory professor in Israel who was really talking about structural social work and policy practice. It was her main focus, and that was something that I was interested in. But in the Canadian context, there was nothing that I could draw on to say that Black social workers were putting out that kind of data. Now, uh, during the course of my MSW, of course, I started to learn about Black social workers who were doing the work, but it was not their information was not in mainstream education anywhere that I could find. So I thought, you know what, this is an opportunity to look at that area and then to think about how do I move this into the mainstream.
And you've traveled a lot of different places around the world.
Yes.
And when you share this information with representatives from other countries, what is their response?
Um, it's usually I get a lot of head nodding. I get a lot of interest in the research that I produce, but it's often it kind of ends there, right? Usually when I go to conferences, like I can particularly think of one conference I went to in the UK in 2017, and that's when I was first starting to really branch out and travel to academic conferences. And I remember presenting the politics of social work, and also at the time I had written about the Black experience of precarious work in social services. And so both papers together were really looking specifically at the experience of racialized workers in the structural context. But when I was presenting the Black experience of precarious work, it was again just myself and another Canadian woman, who were the only two Black women who were presenters at this conference. And when we presented our case, and when I presented on precarious work, the questions came, and they were very judgmental in nature. They were very almost like it was a story, it was fabricated, it wasn't real. And so even being able to be published, we were, both of us were being considered to be published for Canada 150. So when Canada had 150-year birthday as a nation, we both traveled to the UK to present our work and to talk about the fact that, multiculturalism is such a buzzword here in Canada, but the experience of Black Canadians is still something of not that celebration, right? We're still experiencing a lot of challenges here, and explicit and implicit bias exists, and so that wasn't very readily accepted. Right, and so my research was questioned, and ultimately we didn't get published, which is
What?
okay. Yes,
You're kidding me.
yeah, no, I'm serious. And the feedback was, it was brutal. The feedback was brutal. And one of the questions while I was at the conference was, is are the challenges that Black Canadians face more uh, more grave, for lack of a better term, more grave than the indigenous population? And my answer to that was, you can't compare apples to oranges, right? It's where I'm not going to discredit our my indigenous brothers and sisters, because the systemic challenges are similar, but they are different, right? And so I wanted to make that distinction clear, that it is not about who has it worse. It's the fact that injustices and discrimination still exist for racialized people, and data and research is coming out of our communities to prove that we have a say, and we know what is happening within our communities, and we know also how to solve our own problems, by not just, not just standing up and saying, "Hey, help us," but we're actually working to put forth solutions that we know work, because it's coming from our communities.
In our remaining time, can you give us the journey of the great organization you are the driving force of,
Mhm.
developing young leaders of tomorrow today? How did it start? Where did the idea come about for this great organization?
Yeah, so DYLOTT really started. I think DYLOTT started immediately after I came back from that UK experience, and I think within that same time period. So I was in the UK in July of 2017, and by October of the same year, I had traveled to Latvia to be a delegate as of one of the Global Diplomatic Forum, and so I was one of the Canadian delegates. And being at that conference, at that youth forum, where young leaders from across the world have the direct opportunity to engage with senior policy leaders, foreign policy leaders across the world in the same room for 6 days straight. You had access to world leaders. We were in the Latvian parliament. We sat and we had a session with the Latvian parliamentarians, and we were talking about Brexit at that time, and preparing for the European transition, uh, post Brexit and all of that. And those were conversations that I'd never had before, ever in my life. And I thought about, if myself at that point, who had been in academia, had been, studying, the need for representation at the policy level, if I can't be a part of these conversations, how are other Black youth and young professionals going to be a part of those conversations? How are we going to see our humanity represented? How are we going to hear our voices being heard if there is no opportunity for us to engage in that level of conversation and that level of decision making, right? And so that's leaving from the UK and then going to Latvia, most definitely informed. It created that spark in me to say, okay, we need something that young people can see themselves being represented. Black youth specifically can be in these spaces and be successful and feel supported because somebody else has been there before.
Oh, that's amazing. So, from the time you thought about creating this organization to it becoming a reality, what space of time was there?
Okay, so I think about 2016 when I graduated from York, and then those experiences in 2017, and then we got DYLOTT got funded in 2018, and so really it was about 2.5 years to kind of get that my feet wet, let's say, get my feet wet, and then the first real launch that we had after returning from Latvia, I took a group of young girls, myself and another lady took a group of, I believe it was five young girls and one young man, to the Senate of Canada. And there we met Senator Bernard, and we met a few other senators, women who were leading and doing phenomenal things, working on representation issues, racialized issues, and the girls got the opportunity to interview all of these women. And I think from there, I really gleaned from that experience and thought, okay, how do I expand on this? How do I build on the exposure that these young girls had, and how do I bring that now to that next level where youth and young professionals now have the opportunity to be engaged in a more meaningful way with leaders from our community and allies, right? It's important for me to say that our community can't do it by ourselves. So we do have to find those allies that will help us to do the work. And that's really where it started. So between 2016 to 2018, we started to buzz, and then 2018 onward, things really took off. And I'm so very grateful for 2019, even though it was a very challenging year for me personally. Um, Professionally, it has been a very blessed year. It set up a platform for me that I could never imagined for myself. Even though I've had some phenomenal spiritual women who helped to guide me and guide my growth, and help to cover me in prayer, because I do know the absolute vital importance of a spiritual walk. And so these women really pour into me, especially when I feel burnt out. And they position me to walk in this purpose that I'm walking in.
Well, fantastic. I know in some of our earlier conversations, you mentioned Senator Wanda Bernard. I would love you to share some of the love you have for that wonderful lady.
Oh my goodness. So Senator Bernard, how I even came to know her. So I believe it was in 2017, or early part of 2018. I was co-organizing a conference at York. I was a part of the alumni committee, and I was co-organizing a conference on social work and policy practice. And around that time is when I found out about Senator Bernard. And I found out that she is the first Black tenured professor, social work professor at Dalhousie University in Nova Scotia. And I also found out that she was one of the co-founders of the National Association of Black Social Workers. So that was very important for me, because, again, she has written books about structural social work. She's written many books about anti-racism, anti-oppression, but I've never, in all of my 6 years at York University, I've never heard of her in social work. And I thought, that's an injustice in itself. Um, but during this organizing of a conference, I researched, who are the social workers who are involved in policy practice, and she came up. And honestly, I emailed her office almost on a weekly basis. And when I couldn't get through on email, I would call. And eventually, her assistant Sabrina set up a call with me, Senator Bernard. And after I spoke with her the first time, she said, I admire your tenacity. You didn't give up, even when it was challenging to reach me. You never gave up. And so she was able to come to that conference. She spoke at the conference. And since speaking at that conference, we've stayed in touch ever since. And Senator Bernard has really been that fire behind, supporting me in everything that is possible for her to support me in. She, whatever opportunity she has that she can bring me into a space with her, an influential space, she takes me into that space with her. And particularly, I can speak to attending. This was the first public engagement that I attended with her, was the 100 Accomplished Black Women Gala in 2018. And I sat at the table with her, and I mean, at the table were parliamentarians, right, and federal representatives. And at that moment, I looked around the room and I thought, this is absolutely phenomenal. It's phenomenal, right? And these women who are movers and shakers in our community, who most of us never heard about, right? And but to be in that space till now, I still tell her thank you, and she says to me, "Don't worry, it's for your journey," right? So
Mm,
I
very
just want to tell her
nice.
thank you. Yeah, yeah.
Very, very nice. Oh, so, DYLOTT, share some successes of the organization so far.
Oh my goodness. Yes. So, like I said, we really buckled down in the last year. In 2019, we had an exceptional period. Um, from again traveling to the Senate of Canada for International Day of the Girl, we had three young girls. My older daughter, being 7 years old at the time, sat in the senator's seat. We had two other young girls,
Nice.
9 and 15, I believe, who basically were senators for a day, and yeah, and really talked about, the importance of having representation of Black girls in the career areas of STEAM and French language, right? And those are areas that we know statistically are underrepresented by Black community members, but even more by girls and women. So it was important for us to have representation there. So that was in our Lead Like a Girl program. And then phenomenal success story is having four of our young professionals, four young women, go to United Nations for the Future We Want Model United Nations Conference. Absolutely. And we celebrate that on a daily basis because, again, it was an opportunity to engage with world leaders and young leaders coming up. And again, having connection, we had one of the chief diplomats of Canada, Consul General Nadia Theodore, who was one of the
Yes.
keynote speakers. Yes,
Yes.
she was one of the
The
keynote
queen of
speakers.
dresses. The queen of dresses.
Right? She wears them very well. So she actually helped us get to the UN conference and made it a point of duty to call out the four young women from DYLOTT, saying, it was great to see Canadian representation, absolutely, but by Black women. So those two stories in particular stand out more than anything. But across the board, I have to take the time to tell my team thank you, because without my team, I could not do it. It would be very hard to do it without my team. So I want to just make sure that I take the time to tell Charmaine and Shay and Leighton and Valentine, Lorraine, Shanique, all of you, Haley, all of you. And I know I'm forgetting some people, but my apologies.
So, how is, from your perspective, COVID affecting Black youth?
I think that that's a multi-level question. There's so many challenges that existed pre-COVID that it's very hard to say, oh, because of COVID, our Black youth are suffering in this way. The thing that I think most certainly has been highlighted even more since the onset of COVID is the disparities in opportunities, right? We understand the social determinants of health. Our community members have been preaching the disparity in social determinants of health that impact the Black community in multifaceted ways. But I think with this disease, you really start to see the pronunciation of disadvantage, right? Even something as simple as online learning, having to be home and have access to education online, we're hearing and we're seeing the challenges in a more pronounced way, right? And that's something as simple as not having access to reliable internet, right? Also, you can have reliable internet, but you don't have the equipment to use the internet, right? So things like that, and not even to touch on the topic of mental health.
Um, what has the process of starting this organization shown you about yourself that you may not have known?
I think I underestimated my resiliency, because especially right at the beginning, when that idea started to materialize, I knew that intellectually I could do the work, but I think that resilience piece of, when it gets really, really tough, am I willing to stay and see the work come to fruition, or am I just going to let it go and go do something that is easy? And over the course of 4 years since I graduated, I really started to see myself as being somebody that is not that easy of a person to give up. When I come up against a roadblock, I mope for a day. I do take a day to mope, but at the same time, during that down period, I'm thinking about what do I do next? How do I get around this challenge? Because I need to get around that challenge in order for me to get to where I need to go, this challenge, I need to bypass it some way. What I found most uh, as something that is encouraging about myself is developing that resilience when, and also those critical thinking skills that are necessary. How do I fix this problem that I'm up against? And if I can't fix the problem, what's the resource that is out there that I can tap into to help me solve that problem?
What is the vision for the next year or two? Because you told me you had a really good, powerful 2019, and there's been a little bit of a hiccup in 2020, and you've probably had to readjust. But what's the vision for the next year or two?
Well, our vision right now is to expand on the work that we're doing, to expand on the successes that we've experienced, and to as we roll these programs out and as we continue to expand, our vision uh, is to develop a sustainability model, right?
Mm,
One of the things that we know that is a challenge within the Black community and Black communities is that ideas are everywhere. We are generators of wonderful ideas, but that staying power is something that we find to be a challenge. So over this year and over into 2021, 2022, we want to make sure that we continue to build those strong foundations. We continue to stand on the shoulders of those who have come before us and continue to be cutting edge in what we're doing because part of the success story of DYLOTT is that we're doing things differently, right? Our approach is different. The ideas that we have are different. Our programs are different, and we're being very intentional about what we're offering because we know the questions are being asked, and many organizations are answering those questions, but they're answering them in a way that is replicating the status quo. And so we are intentional about not doing that. We want to do things differently to produce different results.
well, that's it. Because I don't want to get too much into part two. I want to hold right there. Um, any final words you'd like to share with our audience, and also where can people find out more?
Yeah, so I do want to make a shameless plug, Dr. Vibe, and I do want to take a moment to celebrate with DYLOTT, with my team, that I was recently named, as recent as today, named one of the Future of Good top 21 new founders to watch in Canada. So I can't emphasize enough how significant that is, again considering how young we are as an organization, but clearly the work that we're doing is impactful enough that it will be recognized nationally. So that is something that I do want to put out, again, share the spotlight with my team because it is a team effort. And again, I also want to extend gratitude to Senator Bernard, and for what she has done in helping me advance, and now being one of the top 100 accomplished Black women for 2020, and
Huh?
again to yes.
Yes, I was going to make sure you mentioned that. Well, okay. And then you're selling yourself short because top 25 Canadian women of influence 2020, top 100 accomplished Black Canadian women 2020, top 100 Black women to watch in Canada 2019 award. Like, do you have a mantle of all these different, like, what's going on here?
Oh my goodness. I honestly, somebody asked me, I believe it was you. You asked me last time we spoke, what I do with my awards and do I celebrate? And I said, you know
Yes.
what? I haven't taken the time to celebrate yet because the work is not done yet. And I think especially during this period of COVID where and again it would be remiss if I didn't mention the civil unrest that is, just it's just across the world right now. And I think uh it's the situation where you are sad because of the severity of what is happening. And if you would allow me, Dr. Vibe, I have to say this,
Take your
that
time.
yes, thank you. I have to say that we need to recognize media trauma, especially for the Black community, Black communities across the world, because no other format do we see the realness and the rawness of our brothers and sisters being slaughtered, right? There's no other place that we see those things in such extreme ways, and they're presented in our home, right? So there's no escape. So I really want to say thank you for putting out that positive image communities can hold on to. And I also want to thank buybacks.com and other Black media professionals who are putting out positive images from our communities. It's important to counteract the negativity that is happening. So thank you.
The pleasure is ours. We're here to serve, amplify, and uplift.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Where can people find out more?
Okay, so you can find out more about DYLOTT itself by going to our website. Our website is currently being updated, so a lot of the information you might not see it, the most up-to-date information right now, but continuously check back and you'll find it. So we're at www.dylott.com, DYLOTT.com. You can also follow us on LinkedIn. If you just type in DYLOTT, you will find us. You'll find me there as well. Our Twitter handle is at DYLOTT_, so at DYLOTT_. And we have an Instagram page now as well. So you can continue to follow us. Most up-to-date information on Twitter, but we have Instagram and LinkedIn and Twitter are all active right now.
I have put up the Twitter handle of Candice herself and also the website address for DYLOTT. It's right up on the screen. And also this will be shared on the replay of this broadcast on my website. Thank you so much for taking time from your positive productive schedule. Love to you, love to your family, love to the DYLOTT team. I also want to thank on the live, Serena, Dr. Tachi, and anyone else who watches live or listen to this live, watch it live on the replay, watch it, etc. You know where I'm coming from. I'm Dr. Vibe, your host and producer of the award-winning Dr. Vibe Show, the home of Epic Conversations. I'm the host of Epic Conversations, 2018 award winner given out by the Canadian Ethnic Media Association. And I am the host and co-producer of monthly online live conversations with 4 Black fathers that are co-sponsored by Dad Central, Canada's national fatherhood organization, and Dove Men Care. As always, I like to close out. And did you like the new intro? Give me feedback. Aim bigger, aim better, aim higher, aim wider. And always remember, as Robert F. Smith says, if you're ready, don't waste this crisis. And since Dr. Tachi is watching this live, she likes to have the hashtag be more. So be better, wiser, stronger, healthier. That's what she's looking for. That's what we're all looking for. Even if those aren't ready, we're there to accept them and help them along the way. And also a big shout out to BIA Media, who helped me produce this, another epic conversation, by the way. God bless. Peace, do well. Keep the faith. And especially for Candice, walk good. Good, buddy. Bye-bye.